Hey, what's up, you guys? First and foremost, thank you for tuning into this video. But before the video starts, I just want to encourage you guys. If you feel like this video is going to give you value, or if you've gotten value from previous videos, and even from our community, I would encourage you guys to subscribe. Now, why do we want you guys to subscribe? We want to make sure that every time that we drop an episode or we drop a conversation or we interact with somebody on this conversation, but that you guys get alerted to watch the episode. So we just want to say, make sure you subscribe. That'll help us not only get the information out to you, but also it'll help build the channel so that we can go and create better content, more efficient content, and also that we can get the people that you guys want us to interview in order to make this even more valuable for you guys. So just want to say thank you so much, and let's get back to the episode. Hey, what's up, y'all? We had another special guest on today's conversation, a dear friend, somebody who supported, our movement from the beginning. So anytime we have a chance to speak and get some knowledge from this person in business, in regards to business entrepreneurship, or just wisdom, we definitely want to provide the platform for somebody who has been there from the beginning. And so, we're grateful to have a special guest today, Miss LaVonne. And so the first thing we do is just, if you can, just introduce yourself to the people and tell the people how you bring value, what you're doing in the community, I guess we'll just start this conversation off there.
So, hi everybody, I'm LaVonne Idlette, and I guess I would say that I am an Olympic athlete who is now retired, who turned into a securities attorney. But what I really do is I help people find ways to maximize their earnings, to give abundantly, and to minimize their tax burden. And so we may specializedly call that wealth preservation strategy, but in general, we care about helping people live their best life the way that they see fit with the resources they've been able to gain over time.
That's fire. How did you particularly get into, that per se?
What I really realized, so I have my undergrad degree is in finance. So I really thought that I was going to be a Wall Street person. I was going to go out and tycoon it. But what I realized in that is sort of like the finance industry is really built on getting people to pay you fees and not teach them things. And so there's a lot of unscrupulous behavior as it pertains to like other people controlling your money without you knowing what's going on. And so I began sort of down this rabbit hole of how do I help people realize where their money is going, how to keep more of it, how to like check their professionals and all of that. And so it's sort of been like a snowball of discovery, finding little holes and gaps in the market and saying, okay, I can solve that.
And is that something that you were, I guess, dealing with yourself?
So me, not so much, because when I 100% grew up in a conservative household that always talked about money. So how to make more money all the time, how to like invest and that kind of stuff, but also being like, you don't need anything more than like what God has given you organically. Like, don't go out and do too much. So I was never having like I was afraid to go broke feelings.
Well, congrats on that. Thank you for participating in the industry for sure. The first thing we like to ask our guests is, if you can go back 10 years ago from today, based off what you know, based off the knowledge that you've learned, based off the knowledge that you gained, based off of the experiences that you had, what would you tell yourself, the version of you that was 10 years ago from this exact moment?
All right. So 10 years ago, I was 29. I had already been to the Olympics. I already owned a business. I had just finished law school, and I would have told myself to sort of build more relationships with people who were lateral to me. So meaning friends. Like I have friends, but when you're around 30, most people start focusing on, I need to go meet Oprah. I need to go meet someone who's doing something that I want to do. I did a lot of that. But what I didn't do a lot of that I would do now is build my friend group stronger so that we would be growing at the same pace and like helping each other, because my friends have the energy that my mentors don't have, the desire to take risks that my mentors don't have. And so your lateral friends will be the person that's like, all right, boom, let's do it. Your mentors are more like, why are we doing this? We don't need to do this. We've already made money. Let's relax.
No, it's funny you say that because, I tell people that all the time. I'm like, the best thing that we can do is, you just want to spend, I have this rule where I say, you want to spend 33% of your time with three types of people. Number one, you do want to find a mentor, whether that's in person or virtual, or somebody that you're following their blueprint that's already done it, so it'll help you save you some time over a period of time.
Yeah.
You want to spend 33% of your time with people who are, like you said, around your, and maybe not age, but around your, it could be age around your like level.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the same industry,
Mm-hmm.
but people who are on the same trajectory, so you can then build with them. And then 33% of your time, should be spent with people that, you're teaching, so you can, you learn by teaching, but then also it's a form of, giving back, and, you want to teach, and the more people you teach, I believe that the more money you make long term. But in terms of what you said was right, you always want to find your tribe you want to build with, because those are the people. It's like college. I use this example all the time. Like, I am so happy that I was a person that was social in college, because I still have friends today from college from 10 years ago, right? And college, for example, is the one place where everybody is in. Maybe I may be studying science. This person may be studying business. This person may be an athlete. This person may be just trying to figure it out. But it's the one place where you have the most amount of people in one place going in a direction where they're trying to figure it out. So they're more open-minded to trying things. And it's just like, like you said, in business and entrepreneurship, it's kind of like the same thing. You want to find your college group in that space, so where you can build and grow with. So you look back 5 years, now you have your, so that was very, very important that you say that. How important is that though?
Today, this episode is brought to you by Liquid Brokers, a licensed and regulated trading platform that opens up the foreign exchange markets for you to trade currencies and cryptocurrency. Let's dive in. First and foremost, Liquid Brokers is a platform that's licensed and regulated, which means you can trade with peace of mind. They offer a 1 to 500 leverage, giving you the opportunity to make the most of your trades. Plus, if you're outside of the US, you'll have access to the MT5 trading platform. But wait, there's more. Liquid Brokers also provide you with access to their in-house trading platform, Liquid Charts and Liquid Charts Pro. This allows you to trade on the go, making it easy to stay on top of your investments. Now, here's where it gets really exciting. You can actually refer the platform as an affiliate and earn cryptocurrency every day. That's right. You can use your earnings to build your crypto portfolio, your trading account, or for whatever you want in your everyday life. So, what are you waiting for? Head to the description and use the link to create your free Liquid Brokers account. Don't forget to follow and subscribe for more awesome content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.
Man, so it's so crazy because you said two things that like stuck me. One, I am definitely still friends with all my college friends, and I graduated 20 years ago. So we have been in each other's weddings, baby showers, all the things. We've literally lived a life together at this point. But also different industries. So what I've learned from dealing with people in so many industries, I've been blessed to be a securities attorney. So we kind of see a lot of different, like, this is how they're doing this business over here. But a cheat code in most things is, this is how they do it in an accounting firm. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do that in a mortgage company. Like, there are just things that, everybody sort of lives in the, especially older people, that this is just how we do it, right? This is how it goes. But then you like learn a blueprint from some other industry. You're like, yo, that works over here too. Better, actually.
Right. It's like, it's like certain principles, kind of carried throughout, any industry for real. So we want to kind of bring it back to the beginning before we get into the nuts and bolts. I like to just kind of take it back to give people, give the listener, give the viewer, a picture of what it was like, when you started on your journey in business entrepreneurship. How did you even get the idea to be a part of it? Like, where did it start? Start from the beginning.
Okay, so sort of was always a person who like wanted to make money, so I would sell a little something, and in the beginning it was my own Costco snacks at home. That's, to school, take them to school, 100% profit. My mama don't know I'm selling this stuff, but in terms of organized business, I sort of had a blueprint rented out for me. So my father really thinks that he is the brain and that I am Pinky. And together we will go out and take over the world. So from very young, he would always say, go get this license, go do this thing. I think you should take this class, think about this, go to this training. And so I sort of had a built-in mentor that, I didn't listen to all the way. Like, let's be honest, no one listens to their parents in a good amount of that time frame between 12 and 25. It's just like you're trying to tell me what to do as opposed to like, I'm trying to guide you. So my first business out of college was I got into real estate. I had a real estate license, I had a mortgage license, but I took the money that I got as a signing bonus and I bought a salon in Fort Lauderdale Beach. And it was my first lesson in people. So my first lesson in people was I grew up where if I don't like you, I'm going to say I don't like you. And I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to talk to you. That's just how it goes. I grew up in a very, I like you, I don't like you, I don't like you. And I don't tell lies. And I don't purposefully try to mislead people. So my first lesson in people was that not everybody is raised the same and not everybody has that same level of moral compass. So the business partner I had in that business was stealing the money and doing all kinds of crazy stuff to make me seem like I was crazy. So that was my first life. You live in a rose-colored bubble. Now, you need checks and balances. Don't just believe what people say. You need to make sure that you are triple checking before you get married to someone, which is what a business partnership is. You need to see people angry before you get into relationships with them. So all these kind of that's the beginning of my life. It was a very expensive lesson that I got to write off on my taxes for years, but that was the beginning. And then from there, it's just sort of like, I've had a bunch of different businesses just from I'm willing to try anything. And I don't like to conjecture. So I need to try it for myself so I can know if I tell someone else to do this. So from buying video games, for phones, all the way to owning a PR firm outside of the law firm and all that kind of stuff too.
That's good. You just said, you want to be able to know how to do the thing before, have an experience with it before you do the thing. And it's crazy because, for what we do over here, hosting events, I remember my first event, big event during Art Basel the first year, I had somebody that was willing to help. And they were like, Amari, why are you doing everything? I was like, well, because in the future, when it gets bigger, if it gets bigger, if God blesses us with that, then it's I want to be able to know what and how to delegate it, and I can learn that when it's smaller, because then people won't notice the mistakes as much.
Yeah.
And it's messing up in front of two people, in front of your friends, singing in front of your friends and family, like karaoke, then, being on stage in front of 100,000, 50,000 people, right? For an example. So you mentioned sports. You mentioned being an athlete. From what you said 10 years ago, you were in the Olympics or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. What was that like? What was that like? What was the business behind that? How was that experience? Can you run us through that?
Yeah, so track and field is a self-elected profession, which means that people just decide that they are pros, right? You finish college and you're a pro now. But what it really means is you're getting drug tested. That's how I define being a pro is, are you being drug tested or not? And then you add to that so I ran track and I ran the 100-meter hurdles. And for the pleasure of 12 seconds of running, I got to travel the world. So the business behind it is, it's just like concerts kind of. So you have a promoter, which is like a meat promoter, and they go out and they find sponsors, and then they talk to agents, and the agents bring the talent, and we get our own lanes, and we run the races for appearance fees and prize money that is generated from ticket sales and from sponsorship. And so it's very much like a concert, that side of the business. The other side of the business, I call it you get a salary plus a commission. Running track meets is like a commission. The salary part is your actual sponsor. So most people only know about, when you have a shoe deal. So you got a Nike contract, they're going to pay you every quarter. Then you may have some other kind of contract. So me, I was always a hustler. So I had a bed contract. I had sheets contract. I was going to events, trade shows for companies under contract. I was literally just trying, like, you need a person to come and talk about something that has to do with sports. I am there. So
I had no clue that you can do that you can get a bed and a sheet sponsor. That's amazing. Yeah, it's like NIL in a sense.
Yes. So but all like sponsor-based sports are like that. Like, you just go out and you have an agent that goes and gets you contracts with any kind of company that wants to promote using athletes. And I sell it more as the resilience of who I am, not that I'm an athlete, because no one knows anything about performance besides us. So like, I can tell you what I run, like time-wise, but it has no context to anybody else. So I spent more time saying, like, I am a law student who went to the Olympics, who also went to business school. I know what resilience looks like. I can sell and I can help you teach and train your staff on what does it look like to be disciplined, because discipline is not, how excited you can get. It's what you do when you're not excited. And so that's the pretty much the business of it. And you travel. So there are no real track meets in America. So I would have a race in Tokyo. I would go to class, and then I would leave, go to the airport, fly to Tokyo, spend the night, race the next day. You might fly somewhere else to do another race because you're already over there. So let's say the next race will be in Turkey, and then fly home, go to practice. And this is just the business of your life. So 8 months out of the year, I spent a lot of time traveling. I got to see the world. Now, hotels and tracks only. No real experiences except for like when we go to championships. So for example, the Olympics, the World Championships, we are somewhere for 2 to 3 weeks. So you got some downtime to like walk around, see some sights, do some cultural things. The Olympics, I went to the London Olympics in 2012. And it was amazing. Number one, because we were in a country where I speak English. So now I can navigate. I'm going out to the club. I'm hanging out with all the other athletes. This is lit. Because track has its own world championships that book in the Olympics. So if it's a world championship year, then the Olympics, then another world championship. So we see each other all the time. But the other sports, we're all like, oh, you play basketball, you play soccer, you play hockey, getting to know people and like having reverence for their greatness, having all of that in one space with unlimited McDonald's. It's like the best. The harder things were that the one part of the business that most people don't understand is the Olympics does not pay. And they also don't allow you to advertise sponsors that are not Olympic sponsors. So your personal sponsors that have supported you all this journey, all the way there, you're not allowed to talk about it on your social media. You're not allowed to promote it in any way in this block of time that is known as the Olympic blackout.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's actually pretty interesting. How did you navigate that, not knowing or not being able to leverage your sponsorships and give them even more eyes during that time? Were you able to navigate it after or even before, or how was that experience?
So basically, you kind of set them up to understand how that works and that you won't be able to post or promote or do things. And then you speak about it before, you speak about it after, sort of like before you get all the hype, obviously, of the Olympics is coming. So you're getting a lot more podcasts, radio interviews on TV in your hometowns and things. And what I did, what I would consider to be sort of a poor job of is like saying yes. So back then I was so granularly focused, just like most athletes, and like I need to be focused on competing. Like I don't have time to take interviews every day and that sort of thing, which is like maximizing your value from like a business standpoint. But when you're like, I've got to focus on making sure I get over these 10 hurdles clean and don't bust my behind on TV butt naked, you know what I'm saying? So,
right.
But then on the other side, after the Olympics, everything is about how did you perform, and like you get like a little buzz. That buzz might last for the rest of the year, and then now, boom, it's a new year, and no one's talking about the 2024 Paris Olympics anymore. No one cares that you got a gold medal anymore. So now you are back to square one, partially because we don't have a league or a season that is very like popular.
All right. No, I get it. I wish I would have known you back then, because besides 2012, for me at least, it was the first time I sat there and watched the Olympics. I remember I would go to my friend's house at night and we would just sit there and watch the Olympics. And
Yeah,
this is Michael Phelps' year, right? When he
yeah.
won all of those awards. And
Goals.
this was his year. So besides like Michael Phelps and of course Usain Bolt, I didn't know. So I wish I would have known you because I would have been. I gotta go back and watch those Olympics for sure. I want to see you race. That's amazing. Do you think that you being an athlete and yet alone being in the Olympics kind of shaped you for where you are now in your business and entrepreneurship journey? And how so?
100%. But it comes back down to like most things in athletics are just transferable skills that you don't realize that you're building. So, for example, a lot of what you do in business is a numbers game. So you are doing a certain amount of lead generation, you're doing a certain amount of conversion, you're doing a certain amount of fulfillment. It's all a part of what is required in the process to become successful. The process, you just have to be disciplined in the process. So like you might have to talk to 100 people to get a sale. For a person who doesn't have that level of discipline and resilience and belief that is going to work, quit mid-range, right? The other thing is, so there's a book that I quote all the time, and it's called Outwitting the Devil. And one of the things that is in that book that I believe like athletes do this really well, and it's sort of like we don't get too caught up in our own hype. So we never get too high, but also you notice you got another play coming, so you can't get too low either. So even when stuff seems like a failure, you're kind of just learning. So the average regular person will not try something after 2 failures. So like the number that is quoted is 1 in 10,000 people will keep going after 2 failures. So now you done cleared out the space a little bit. It's literally the difference between having a race when I was in high school and having a race as a pro. The amount of people that you're racing is so many more when you're in high school than it is when you're a pro.
Right.
Because
No.
you have to make it through the failure.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because I look at it. I was having a conversation the other day, and you talking in the book says 1 in 10,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
People go past the second failure.
Will not go past the second failure. The second failure, they're like wiping my hands with it. I ain't fooling with it. Too much fear, too much doubt in your head, too much like my mama keeps saying, "I told you so." All of that.
Like I was saying, it was funny. It's funny because I was talking to somebody. They were always saying, you got to get, people are just scared of like no's. And I was like, man, and it's this quote. What is the quote that people say? They say the quote that the more no's you get, the closer you are to a yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you're right. But also even change the perspective of that even so and say, when you say the more no's you get, the better you are, the better you will be. The more no's you get, the goal shouldn't be just to get more no's. The goal really should be to get is between every no, make the no's a lot less. Right. And that just means you're not only just chasing a no, but you're getting better as well. And I think the thing is, when we fail, it's like, it's like the security thing. Like, you don't know. Like, once you fail enough times, you're like, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if this is going to work. And the older you get, the more calculated you have to be. But it's in the same sense. I always look at it from this perspective. If you don't try, like if you don't try, you can always go back to what everybody else or what most people in the world are doing. But what happens if you do try again and you do make it? Like, think about how that can change potentially not only your life, but the people that are going to come way after your time on earth is done.
Right. I look at no's from a completely my perspective on no is mostly around my belief of why I'm doing something. So it's sort of like what I provide to the world. It might not be for everybody, but for the people who it is for, I know I'm going to help them. So you can say no. I'm going to believe it's your loss because I already know I was doing something fly for you. Okay. So my perspective on no is like, cool. I only want to work with who wants to work with me anyway. So we're going to keep moving. I'm going to keep asking, and I'm going to keep putting it out there and providing value, and then having the people who are supposed to be attracted to me, and I leave everybody else behind and wish them luck. Because you don't got to work with me to be great. You can be great on your own.
No, that's real. That's real. So Man, this is a great conversation so far. I'm learning a lot. Obviously, I knew it before you were in the Olympics, but I didn't know, about all these things that you're saying, and that perspective is amazing. Me myself being an athlete, I love to hear athletes' perspective on business and entrepreneurship because there's certain nuances, and especially in different sports, that ultimately carry over to the business world. And I want to get into it, so want to get into what it is that you're doing. Like, so if you can explain step by step, if I say, what, Ms. LaVonne, I want to use your services. I want to, what does that look like, your profession?
Yeah. So it really depends on where you are in your sort of professional life journey. But from the beginning, what I do is sort of like a discovery session. So the discovery is going to say, let's do a Google search. How much of your personal information are we going to see on the internet? Boom, we have a privacy issue. Let's start there. Because privacy is your first line of defense to asset protection. If no one knows you own things, they can't sue you. Okay? So then we start there. And then we go, okay, how are your things titled? If you were to get into an accident right now, how much of your stuff is at risk? So then we go through and we look at that. And all right, now you need a trust, you need a holding company, you need this. Okay, how is your money flowing? Cool. How much is your life cost? They were going, and it's a step-by-step process to sort of get to, all right, now we are secure. What are you most interested in? Do you want to buy a business? Do you want to just strictly invest? Do you want to find something to do? People are at different points in their life looking at things in different ways. Cool. So now I can help them I help find, finance, due diligence, and like reorganize and help bring the professionals that are needed to build that business. I help with all of that process. And that's businesses and real estate. It's best when they're the twofer. Like that's my sort of sweet spot is there's real estate, there's a business inside. We're going to buy both and we can finance both and make it better and prepare it to exit. And then the very last piece is you're making money. You have plenty. How do you give abundantly in an organized and sustainable way? So setting up foundations and for some people, churches and things like that, so that they can be a sustainable giver into the thing that like fills them up more than making money.
So let's start with the last part first. All right, you talked about foundations and giving. What is the importance of a foundation? Because if I'm somebody, I don't need to set up a foundation to give. But when you're talking about business and entrepreneurship, there are a lot of people, especially like you see it a lot in sports, especially. Just coming from a sports background, I see it. Every athlete has a foundation. Every artist has entertainment. Every artist has a foundation. Church is technically a foundation. What is the importance of maybe having a foundation rather than just, giving?
So the biggest thing is about sustainability of the ability to give. So most people who end up on the other side of charity who haven't figured out how to make money yet don't have sustainable nonprofits. So I build foundations for the purpose of you now can help the grassroots person who already gives lunches, who already gives book bags, who already gives bicycles. You can help them be sustainable by already having a bucket of money. Most people, you use the foundation as a way to control where your money goes instead of like blanketly just giving it to the Red Cross and you don't know how they're giving $15 million salaries and most of your money is not reaching the blood bank that you thought it was. And so
that's something I want to talk about too, but go ahead.
But a part of it is because they're using the code. So the code is partially you taking money and you're going to donate money and assets so that you can offset your taxes. So you get a lower tax bill because you are a giver. That's great. And then on the other side of that, sustainability is about investing. And so you're taking that capital, which almost all nonprofits are doing this, especially big nonprofits. You have to give 5% of your assets under management a year, no matter what. Like that's the bare minimum. And most companies.
Can you explain what that means?
Okay. So let's say you donated $100,000 of your profit to your nonprofit or any nonprofit. You get a write-off for that. But that $100,000 that's in there, now $5,000 is the amount that has to go out. So in the out, if you don't have your own programming, you're just going to say, hey, I know Amari will be giving out book bags for back to school. I'm going to give you $5,000 and let you give out book bags. So now you have a new donor in us, and we don't actually have to figure out where to get book bags and supplies and things and set it up and market and do the things. So we don't do the actual activities. And then we take that other $95,000 and we invest that money so that it can continue to grow. And so I can give out $5,000 next year, or maybe $10,000 because the money grew. So it's about being able to continuously give and it get bigger and bigger over time versus like every year you struggling because you got to figure out how to raise money. So there's a fine balance between making sure that you're giving so that there's good impact, but also making sure that you are retaining, which is why like salaries can be egregious to me, because at the end of the day, I get it. Like you have to manage a huge nonprofit like a American Red Cross. It's complex. It's not $15 million. So, some of those resources could be better used, in my opinion. And so, in my opinion, I'm just saying I'm not giving there, and that's just an example, not to like pick on them, but I'm not giving to a large nonprofit because I know that if Amari is a 12th grader and he's about to go to college, my $5,000 to him and helping him pay for books and offset some of his costs is I can see that direct impact. And I can choose it with my own nonprofit.
All right. So now that we have the nonprofit, how much does it cost to really get a nonprofit set up, if you don't mind?
Depends on the complexity. So if you are just setting it up for the purpose of having a charitable arm and you're not going to do programming and you don't want to be a public charity vehicle that has a public budget, generally you'll be somewhere in the $4,500 to $5,000 range for the paperwork, and then it also includes generally the filing of the tax forms that you have to have. And although most likely you won't owe taxes unless you're doing outside business activity with the nonprofit, but other than that, yeah. You still have to file it.
Okay, that's dope. So the goal is really, if you can get a nonprofit or a foundation to do so, because from what I'm hearing, you're saying that you can intake money. Is what it sounds like. If you have a nonprofit, you can intake money and then use that money for outreach purposes.
You could do more than taking money. So for example, our nonprofit got a building donated from Bank of America. So
wait, what? Hold on. You said your nonprofit Bank of America gave you guys a building?
So wow. The building is in a place where it would have been hard for them to sell the building because it's in Belgrade actually. So they donated the building. And we turned that building into more or less a student athlete center, where they can come, they can do homework. We have a bunch of other like programming there. There's a video game room. They spend time there. Think of it like a Boys and Girls Club, but for student athletes. So they're members of this organization, and we help them prepare for college, leadership, and the things that happen along the way, right? But so the benefit to Bank of America is they get the write-off for the full market value. They probably would have never sold it for full market value because there's just not enough banking people in Belgrade, unfortunately. And so we get a building, and then while we have a budget to build out to become this facility, and most of the people came and they worked for free. That's called an in-kind donation. So instead of us needing money to pay the contractor said, "Oh, we'll bring the paint, we'll do the painting, we'll do the trim, we'll do this, we'll donate the computers." And so what went from like a $200,000 budget for build out and all of that, it turned into around $30,000. And so people can donate not only money, but assets and time.
Wow. All right. So let's move on to the next step. So now you have a foundation. Cool. But then I heard you talk about trust. You said something about a trust. And trust is like this whole big thing that people love to talk about. Trust this, trust that. When it's hard to trust people in today's society. No, I'm just kidding. But from what I've seen just in the past and what my knowledge is and what a lot of the like major families that have a lot of money or the major institutions are all built under a trust, especially when you're talking about like real estate and things of that nature. Like what is a trust? What is the benefit of one? Why should anybody in business and entrepreneurship have one? Why should anybody have a trust? How do you even formulate a trust?
All right. Okay. So a trust is an entity type. Think about it like there's a corporation, there's an LLC, there's a sole prop, there's a partnership. A trust is an entity. That's the number one. Number two, there are two types. One is revocable, which means that it operates as a privacy vehicle for you. It utilizes your social. But again, like I said, privacy is your first line of defense to asset protection. So then you also have an irrevocable trust, which takes it out of your name. It's its own entity. It has its own EIN number. It has its own bank account. It does its own thing. That's what most families are going to have, especially wealthy families, because they are trying to protect their assets from their own bad decisions. So now if you get into a car accident, these assets don't belong to you. So no one who sues you can get them. If, anything were to happen, literally, those ain't your assets. There's nothing they can do about it. Okay. So that's one of it's an asset protection vehicle. But the other thing is, revocable or irrevocable, we use it to avoid probate court. So the worst thing that can happen to a person is when you pass away, your family gets to fighting. And your family gets to fighting and the judge gets to decide. And so we don't like judges deciding on things that have nothing to do with them. They don't know you. They don't know your family. They're only using intent-based documents like a will to say, and then you might have wrote 2 or 3 wills by the time you become a certain age. And the people who are fighting are going to use the words to best serve them. And so they're going to be like, this is the real will. This is the will that the new wife gave because he was under pressure and all this other stuff. So now the fighting happens. And not only are you not there to help, the person who chooses the judge, we don't like that. So we avoid probate court altogether by having family trust so that these private documents settle your estate and allow your things to be given at something else super important, a step up in basis. So what is a step up in basis? Let's say you have a house, right? And you pay $100,000 for this house. What most people do, which is a bad idea, by the way, is they'll say, oh, I have a son. I'm going to put my son's name on the deed so that even if something happens to me, my son gets the house. But that means that you step into their basis. All that means is you paid $100,000. Now the person whose name on it, they're being treated like they paid $100,000. So now if they go to sell it after you die, and let's say now that you live in Miami, so the house that you paid $100,000 is worth $1 million, right? If you do it that way, you will have to pay capital gains on that $900,000. If you put it in a trust, you get a step up in basis at the person's death, which means that I paid $100,000. I die in 20 years. It's worth $1 million. When you get it, you get the $1 million basis. So if you sell it, you don't pay any capital gains.
So you're saving from taxes if you have a trust, pretty much.
Yeah.
What they say that were banks made this way? Like back in the day when you have like these two, what is the method when two families come together and they say, we're going to put our riches together, and create a bank? Are those made through trust as well?
So you're probably talking about a trust company. So a trust company offers trustee services. And so basically my family's money, your family's money, we're going to put it together in like an account that custodians the money, and we may loan it out. That's a banking service. We also may this entity is going to act as the trustee so that when your kids need something, they're going to come to the trustee and say, hey, I need $50,000 to start a business. And then based on whatever your trust documents say, your trustee will either say yes, because it's written in there, or they have discretion and then they can say yes or no, depending on what's going on.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. All right. So now you have trust. You have foundation, then you have trust. And then what is the next step?
So we talked a little bit about privacy. So privacy is about how things are titled. So once you have a trust, you're going to go and retitle your things so that your name is not in public record. including.
Why is that important? Why is it important that your name is not on public records? Don't you want people to know who owns what or who doesn't own what?
All right, I'm gonna give you a good
For
example.
recognition, for power, for...
No,
I'm asking you, the expert. I'm asking you.
I'm gonna tell you. This is why. All right, Amari, you used to be a young person. You used to be a hothead, right? So boom, somebody don't like you. And like, let's say something actually happened. Most of the time, nothing ain't gonna actually happen. But what I'm gonna say is like, I don't like you. So I'm gonna say something happened. Like, you did something that bothered me, and now I'm gonna sue you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to a lawyer that works on contingency. And what a lawyer that works on contingency is gonna do, they're gonna go and they're gonna search your name. And then what comes up, everything you own, businesses, where you live, all of that kind of stuff. So now when they see that, they're like, oh, yeah, we'll take your case for free and get paid on the back end. So now I can waste your time because they have a financial incentive to do so. But if you follow what I'm saying and you've retitled everything and your name is nowhere in public records, when they do that search, they're going to be like, you ain't got no money. It's not worth pursuing. So that's why it's your first line of defense, because even if you win a lawsuit, you will also still be wasting time and resources and money to fight. So you may win, because a lot of people win lawsuits, but at the same time, the person who's trying to bother you just to get money generally doesn't have anything to lose. So it's super important from that standpoint, because most people who want to know what you own don't mean what, and you still own it. So if you want to go to a conference and talk and tell people, how great you are because that soothes your inner ego, that's cool too. You're just not going to identify the properties, and you're not going to identify the names of the businesses when you do that, because you don't want to break your own privacy trying to fulfill your ego.
What is the methodology behind naming something, naming an entity something? Like, let's use a name for an example. Like, this person, like, how would you word it? How would you name it so it can be discreet? How does that part play out?
I mean, for the most part, naming mechanisms aren't important. Most people, especially if you own a bunch of real estate, they just say the address LLC or the address trust, because it makes it simple and easy for them to like manage the documentation process.
And I can remember it.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Which is rich, because I remember when I used to I would see people and they would have a bunch of properties and they would be thinking of these cute names, and then you're like, well, what property is that? I don't know. Let me look it up. And you got to go through all these documents. It creates confusion when you just make up names or think that a fancy naming mechanism is a good idea. Well, other than that, just non-self-identifying things. So like every single person I know, when they set up a family trust or a family foundation, they love to throw their name on it because like sounds like a good idea. And maybe if you're already like super famous and everybody already knows how much money you have, aka Bill Gates, that's fine. But like if you're trying to mind your own business in your own gated community and not be attached to things, don't use your names. I usually put people's name backwards, actually. But
that's dope. So like if you had Amari Bryant, it'll be like what? Bryant Amari? Or you would
IRAMA. Arama.
We might have to leave that out because they're just giving me an idea for future business purposes for sure.
Yeah.
No, 100%. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense actually, and especially when you're doing some special things, or even if you may mess up, you want to be protected.
For sure, life is mostly like protecting yourself from the unknowns, because we can prepare for things that we know are going to happen or that are like very risky. But at the same time, like literally, the Kennedy family didn't have to pay anything for the $100 million wrongful lawsuit they got when Ted Kennedy got in the accident that killed that girl. So that is what asset protection is for.
And why didn't they have to pay anything?
Because they don't own it. And he don't own it, and they don't have to make distributions to him. The trust has discretion. So he gonna just he isn't allowed.
So explain what happened. Explain the situation. So you got to explain that one because that was good.
Okay. So
and a lot of money, so that didn't get paid out. So we want to know
exactly. So one of the Kennedy sons was in an accident that resulted in someone else dying, a young lady. That young lady's family sued the Kennedy family. Him specifically, you said, Like what lawyers do when they're trying to get money is like they're gonna throw it at the wall and like you're gonna have to just throw it out. That's what they're like trying to get. Whoever got money, we want them to be on the hook. So they go to court. He loses because it's definitely wrongful death. He's definitely at fault. All of that. $100 million wrongful death lawsuit. Boom. Staple it to his credit report. Okay. So now,
whoa! You got stapled to his credit report. Hold on. You have to explain that too. What do you mean it got stapled? Well, how does the $100 million?
A judgment is reported on your credit.
How does that affect him?
From a credit standpoint, I don't know about how many points it's going to knock you down. It's just going to be reported, though, that you owe someone this.
Public record.
Public records. And if you own assets, they could take that judgment and put an attachment on those assets, right? So if you own a house, if you own a business, all that in your personal name, they'd be able to attach those assets and then force you into foreclosure to sell the assets to pay the judgment.
They'll keep doing that until they pay it off.
So, two important things. Judgments have a statute of limitations, which means that you can only collect it for a certain amount of time. Generally, it's around 10 years. So, that's one. Two, the $100 million is owed from take it. Now, all of the family's wealth is in a family trust, Penny Family Trust. So, he gets distributions from that trust. But one of the provisions that can be written into a trust are spendthrift provisions, which just means that if something happens, then don't give them money. So one of the things is if there's a judgment against them, and the judgment can be for anything, alimony, child support, whatever. If this happens and they have a judgment for this, don't send them any money as a distribution. Now, so they're not going to send them any money. So the judgment can't be attached to the trust because he doesn't own the trust. He's just a beneficiary of it. So time passes. Boom, your 10 years is over. It's uncollectible. Now they can start sending him money again. And in the interim of that 10 years, he doesn't own his things anyway. So the house he lives in is paid for by the trust anyway. The car he drives is paid for by the trust and he has a use permit for it. The things are all trust assets that you have the ability to use. So there's nothing for them to attach. They collect $0. The time passes and life is all back to normal.
Okay, wow, that's some great information. So there is a statute of limitation on suits, on money that you could be collected, and then also, as a beneficiary, there could be rules in a trust agreement that you can now put in there that can eliminate keeping the trust on the hook because you're a beneficiary and the owner. So who owns the trust? So when you make a trust, who owns the trust?
No one owns the trust. The trustee has the legal title and the beneficiaries have beneficial interest in the assets, but no one owns it. It owns itself.
And so when you're writing the paperwork up, number one, how much money does it cost to make a trust? And how long does it take to make a trust?
So generally, as a starting point, if you are not having an estate issue, so that's a whole nother point.
Like, what if I wanted to come around with 10 of my friends, closest friends, or 10 of my family members and say, hey, look, this is what we do. Use that example.
Okay, we can use that as an example, but that's not the complexity I was about to mention. So the complexity I was about to mention is, in your life, there is a maximum number that you can give away that creates no tax burden on the recipient or for yourself. And so that is called gift tax max. And right now, the gift tax max is $14,900,000, right? But at the end of this year, the number goes down to $5 million. Why is that important? Because what you're doing when you are creating a trust and you're retitling things, you're gifting that stuff to the trust. So all of the assets that you move over there, subtract from your your lifetime gifts. Because that number is for your whole life, not just like, the only thing that doesn't have a lifetime gift max is charitable giving. But giving things to yourself or giving things to a trust has a lifetime max. So the complexity that I was speaking about in terms of price comes down to how much over the lifetime gift max you're going to be, because it creates a complexity on moving the asset. So the starting price is $7,500 for irrevocable trust and $2,000 for revocable trust. Revocable trusts are still in your estate though. So if you were to get into a car accident and they did a subpoena of your personal documents, they could compel you to share what's in your trust because it's still yours. If it's in an irrevocable trust, it's not yours anymore. They can't call it. They can't see what's in it now.
So if you were to get a trust, you need to get an irrevocable trust, pretty much.
You pretty much need both, depending on how much wealth you have. But the irrevocable trust is for privacy, so that when you have things, you're titling it in that trust name versus your own.
What are the particulars when you're dealing with a trust? Like, what determines what dollar amount determines if you get an irrevocable or you get a revocable?
I'd say it's more about the amount of risk going on in your life. So most people, if you have like, if you drive a lot, if you are a truck driver, like depending on what kind of like literal activities you're doing, you have more risk than some other people who work from home, don't need that, you're just accounting, you don't do too much. Then your sort of likelihood of being sued is lower than some other people if you own property and some other things. So that's when you should start looking at irrevocable trust, not necessarily a dollar amount, although large dollar amounts definitely need to have both.
Now, you also said that they're bringing the limit of putting things into a trust of 14 million from 14 million to 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
So all of this is legislated, which means that it can be changed at any time, which is why I like to do things in the moment based on the rules that we have. Because once it's done, they can't like retroactively take it back. So at any point, literally a new legislative body or a new president or a new set of congressmen can say, we think that everybody should pay estate tax. So we're going to lower the lifetime gift to 0, which means that as you move things, all your dollars can be taxed upon your death for the estate tax purpose. And estate tax is 40% permanent.
Explain that.
All right. So let's say they once it's moved down to 5 million, but you got $10 million in assets. Every dollar above 5 million to 10 million is taxed 40%.
Wow. Is there a way to get around that through charitable gifts? Can you charitably gift a trust something?
You cannot charitably gift a trust because a trust isn't a charity unless it's a charitable trust. That's a different type of trust. But the type of trust that most people are operating out of, business and family trust and that sort of thing, you would be gifting it to them to avoid the estate tax gift. But if you go above your lifetime gift, you owe taxes on that money. So that's why I said if you go above that number, then the price to create your trust becomes more complex, because then we have to start selling the assets into your trust and things of that nature versus just gifting.
Selling them to the trust,
yeah,
I assume.
Yeah.
So the trust can buy something for $1.
No, because, okay, so like most things, when you're doing something where you are a party to both sides, you don't ever want to look like you are being impartial or unfair, because that puts you in the IRS red flag buttons. So everything is being traded at fair market value, or at bare minimum, what most people would call like fire sale. So like that'll probably be the least that you'll be able to get away with. And no one will say like, that's a bias, ridiculous. Like you gave them a house for $1.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So we have foundation, we have trust, and then what is the next step under that?
All right. So now you are cooking with hot grease and you are like, I want to go out and buy a business. I want to go out and buy real estate. I want to go and figure out how to do deals with other people. And we set up funds. So SPVs, which are special purpose vehicles, to go out and raise capital to invest in other people's deals or your own deals, and you bring outside capital in. So that's sort of my day-to-day. Once you have things set up, your day-to-day is how do we maximize the money that we have in play? And that is investing in your own deals or deals of others. And we do that in an asset protected way, in a compliant with the SEC way.
And why would somebody want to have a fund? Like, what is the purpose of a fund? What is the purpose of having a fund? What is the purpose of raising money for a fund? What is that doing? How does that help a business professional or entrepreneur, any investor, CEO, founder?
The ability to have the capital needed to do the projects that you can add value to is sort of a Trojan horse. It's sort of like, you know what you want to do and you don't have the capital to do it. It makes things a little harder. So the purpose of a fund is literally to say, I have good ideas and I have good execution, and I'm going to use the resources of others to go and execute those deals. So let's say I know where to buy cheap hotels and I know how to make the operations better so I can make the money grow. So I'm going to take that vehicle and use it to go out and talk to people and say, hey, where are you putting your money and what kind of returns are you getting? You can come and do this with me and we can make money together. We can change the world. We can whatever the thing is. That's sort of the purpose of a fund. And what most people don't realize is most fund managers are richer than your famous favorite rich person.
Most fund managers are richer than your favorite, most richest person.
Yeah,
Wait, so you have to explain, how is that possible?
Think about it like this. Steve Schwarzman made $900 million in a year. Beyonce ain't made no $900 million in a year. So, and he's just a fund manager, and he isn't famous. Like, he's famous because people know about Blackstone and like it became famous, but like in general, he isn't famous.
He's not like a celebrity.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so, like, think about, and we're talking annual earnings, more rich. You never know how much net worth a person who owns a private business or private businesses have, which is a great thing. It's, again, privacy. You know how much Warren Buffett has based on ideas of his wealth, based on how much he owns of Berkshire Hathaway. No one knows how much money he actually has.
Okay, wow. So can anybody start a fund?
Yeah, as long as you're not a bad actor. Bad actor meaning you haven't been convicted of a crime of moral turpitude, fraud, you know.
Oh, wow, that's dope. So like, let's say, for example, somebody had a piece of property, or somebody wanted to start a fund where they manage real estate, right? Or they wanted to, build homes, for example. Can somebody start a fund and intake money from people to then do that? And if so, like, let's use that example. How would that process go of creating the fund, of maybe managing the fund, allocating to the fund?
Yeah.
How many people can be in the fund without maybe, I'm not talking about big scale SEC stuff. I'm just talking about, what is the limit?
Everything that you take an outside dollar from where a person is not involved in the business is a sale of security. So the SEC is involved even if it's $10, which most people don't realize. And so the process is you want to find an exemption from an SEC registration because it's really expensive and really time consuming. So what most people know of as SEC exemptions are like regulation crowdfunding, or Reg D raises, which you now see on every billboard or on Instagram ads every day. Someone saying, I can get you XY return. That's a Reg D 506C raise. It allows you to advertise. You need a certain amount of documents to disclose the risk to your investors, and you need to file a form with the SEC that explains what you're doing and how much money you're raising. And you need to file, once you get the money in, we file forms with every state that you have an investor from to put them on notice. And then, so now you have the money, and everything that's not regulated, that can be exempt is $100 million and below. So below that, you can have some type of an exempt rate. Regulation crowdfunding, the most you can do in 12 months is $5 million in raised capital. But now you take that, you have your documents, your compliance, you don't lie, you don't puff. Puff is like kind of like stretch the truth because you don't have to. You just disclose that what I've done in the past has nothing to do with the future. And this is my strategy. This is the risk to the strategy. So like if, let's say, for example, your example, I'm buying property and I'm going to manage that property and we're going to get the cash flow and we're going to distribute it to our investors and to ourselves, share the profit. There is some risk there. Most of the risk isn't huge, but there's risk. And that risk includes there could be a wildfire that tears the house down. Now we don't have any money and you do still owe the mortgage, by the way. Until the insurance pays, you still owe the mortgage, and the mortgage company can put you in foreclosure. No one has to care. That's a big risk that you like. We call those acts of God, though. So, in your list of when we are disclosing, we put all of that. Now, once you get the money, in terms of management, your job as a fund manager is to make investments and to make good investments that make returns so that you can pay back the principal of the money that was invested and a return to your investment. There's lots of software now that helps you manage that from a like day-to-day, like accounting and like, okay, we brung in $2 million. We're going to invest in this, and this. And you put it in the software and, you use the escrow accounts to buy the properties and you're managing all of that. And then at the end of your fund life, most funds last between 7 and 10 years, you can either sell the properties or you can recapitalize and give your investors their money back and their total return if you're not giving out dividends.
That's interesting to know. What do you think about? You mentioned acts of God and wildfires. We've all heard about the tragedy that's happened in LA. The fires and whatnot. You doing what you do, what are your thoughts on the systematic, measures behind it? Like, for example, I know a lot of places didn't have insurance or, insurance companies are probably going to take years to pay out or if they pay out, depending on how much more premium they collect over a period of time, are having these mechanisms that you mentioned, like if somebody had a trust or had, these things that we talked about, will those type of things help in that situation in any way, shape, or form? And if so, how?
So overall, if you don't have insurance and you're not quote unquote self-insured, which I don't suggest anyway, but
you don't suggest self-insurance?
I don't suggest self-insurance because having a lot of money to pay for something is not insurance. It is the ability to pay. You can't indemnify the loss, which means that like now the money's gone. Now, so insurance is built so that you keep the money and you have something to indemnify and make you whole again. And so you pay the premium for the pleasure. So the thing that can help you sort of in that situation for most people, especially families, is having a certain level of insurance internally. So in our family trust, every single person has insurance on them when they turn 30 days old. So that's the cheapest insurance will ever be. That's the first day they're allowed to have it. And those policies you can borrow against and all of that to, let's say, rebuild a house if you're in that kind of situation. And or we also have umbrella policies that cover things that may end up being uninsurable because, State Farm decides they don't want to insure things in California anymore or whatever. That happens often because they are measuring risk based on things that we know nothing about.
Okay. All right. So we talked about foundations. We talked about, a trust. Then we're talking about now we just discussed, funds. What is the next step in, I guess, the hierarchy or keeping yourself safe and protected based off what you do?
Discovery. You gotta know where you are. How much risk are you currently taking on? And then like how to protect that. But then also, what is your life cost? Because we got to get you the cash flow from the investments to cover that life cost. And then from there, we can start building toward our dream life. What most people are doing is living their dream life and then like hoping that it'll last long enough.
Let's get into like the business of what you do per se, right? And my next question is, how much money for those who want to get into your profession, how much money or what is the income potential of your industry? Like, how much money can somebody make from doing what it is that you do?
So what I do, or what I just explained, is like 7 businesses combined that sort of culminates at, there's a consulting company, we intake people, and then we distribute the money out for the services that are required. So each one of those components has a 10-person team, and we make around $9 million or so a year in revenue at about a 20% profit margin. So we're doing fine, but at the same time, the stacking of services is sort of the secret sauce, because we are getting one lead and being able to funnel it out for several things.
$9 million at 20% revenue. So that means that the profit margin is like $1.5 million, something like that. Something like that. So the potential is endless. And how can somebody get to that level? Like, how long did it take to get to that level? How long did it take somebody to get from a point where, they're starting, your profession? And what is the correct term for your profession? Like if I say, hey, Miss LaVonne, what do you do? And I guess that depends on what room you're in.
Yes.
But from a general standpoint, what would you call yourself? Your profession?
I guess I call myself a wealth preservation strategist.
Okay.
And from a starting point, anybody who's starting now is at a major benefit that I didn't have, which is the use of AI and other automations to make things work better and faster. I finished law school 10 years ago, got into fund creation about 8 years ago, got into asset protection about 6 years ago. And so it's more or less been stacking services because we saw gaps in what people needed. But to just be a consultant, what you're really trying to stack is information, because the more information you have, the better you can service people. Because when I know that the gift tax maximum is lowering next year, I can go out to the marketplace and say, do you have more than $5 million in assets? Do you know that if you do not move it into a trust within the year, then you're going to owe 40% of taxes, or your descendants will owe 40% of taxes for the money when they get it through your will. That bit of knowledge and how to solve that problem is a product. So knowledge helps you create the product.
Because you're becoming more solution oriented.
Yes.
So if I have $20 million right now.
Yeah.
In a trust or in something.
Okay.
Then in 2026, if I don't move it somewhere, I'll have to pay a 40% tax on 15 of those millions of dollars?
No, unless you die next year, which we don't want. So we're talking. So it's not when the regulation changes. The regulation change just limits how much you can gift now.
And where would we move that to? Will we create another trust? Will we create another fund?
No, once it's in the trust, it's good. The trust can have $1 billion. That's why everybody's money is in trust.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Because
and how much money do you?
Because no one dies. That's the key. No one owns it and no one dies. It's perpetual. So what that means is there is no death trigger to have an estate tax trigger.
Could you go a little bit deeper into that?
Meaning, so like, let's say, for example, my family's trust is going to say something to the effect of, the descendants of my grandmother's body, which just means that includes my parents, that includes me, that includes my baby, that includes my baby's baby. So over time, people will die, but the descendants are still named in the trust already.
Because it was already triggered from the jump.
Yeah.
So even the people who aren't born yet are pretty much a part of it.
Yes. But the difference is that the way that we have it set up is known as a dynasty trust, which means it'll last for 1,000 years. Every other trust type only lasts 21 years past the death of the last living person. So In most cases, it'd be some baby or something. And then like once that person dies plus 21 years, it's the longest it'll. It's
So
rule against perpetuities. Only 1-2 states.
So alive, but the person that is alive. So like, let's say I have a baby and that person is in the trust. Is it the alive person or the descendant of the last known descendant of that
It's
person?
a live person.
And how do you extend that?
So the extension of that would be that person having enough knowledge to know that they need to go and create their own trust to put things into, because 21 years after their death, that particular trust will extinguish.
So then what happens to all the wealth that has been accumulated in that trust with generations and generations? Like, what happens to that wealth once the 21 years is over?
It gets distributed to all the living beneficiaries at that time. And they pay taxes on it.
And you pay taxes on it?
Yeah. If you get distributions, it's taxable income.
Well, what if I'm asking for a loan or something like that?
A loan.
Could it be a loan?
Says it's a loan.
But it won't be considered a loan if the 21 years is up, because it has to go somewhere.
That's right.
That makes sense. And so what is the point of even having that if you know that it eventually ends, which will eventually, if the principles of whatever you're trying to...
Well, basically, the entire premise is over time...
Like, shouldn't somebody get a dynasty trust?
Most people should get a dynasty trust. But let's just say, as time passes, you should be teaching your children this. You should be teaching your grandchildren this, so that when it comes to them, they're also creating their own trust, or they're adding to that trust, or preparing for the ending of the original grandfather's trust or whatever.
And so how does a family start, right? Let's say we wanted to create a trust, or we wanted a way to preserve our wealth. Right? We have all of these family members everywhere.
The first step would be...
How do we start?
So the first thing that I suggest to most people is you got to have an in or out meeting. An in or out meeting says, we want to build something together. And so, because I do this with extended families too. So we want to build something together. What does that look like? We're going to start this trust for our family, and everybody's going to bring one asset, $5,000, $10,000, some work, something. You in or you out, right? First meeting, ins and outs. Now the ends, you're going to have a real family meeting where you establish what you want to go into the trust, what your intent is, which could include things like, if you don't go to college, you don't get any distributions. If you start doing crack, you don't get no distributions. Like, literally as granular as that sort of thing. But your family is having this meeting to sort of set in stone what our family stands for. And this is going to be our mode. This is going to be our vehicle. We're all going to be putting assets in so that we can invest together, so that we can grow our wealth together, and everybody will get a distribution and all of that. The ends are in. And then from there, you build, you invest, you buy insurance, you do the things.
Once the trust is made, are you able to then add people to it? Or once the trust is in, the trust is in?
Irrevocable means irrevocable. So if it's an irrevocable trust, what it says, who the beneficiaries are is who the beneficiaries are. You can change nothing. The trustees can buy assets, they can sell assets, they can finance things, they can move the money around to make it better, but they can't add people or remove people.
But can you change the rules within the trust once it's already made irrevocable? Once it's done, it's done.
There is some case law that states to the effect of, like, if you can write into your trust something like, you can change provisions of the trust with 100% like unanimous agreement of the beneficiaries. So let's say there are 20 beneficiaries currently living. If everybody agrees that you want to remove the crack amendment, now you can do crack and get money.
That's awesome. In your profession, what is the amount of people who do what you do in terms of, like, is this like a very sought after profession? Is it a limited amount of people because you're dealing with so much money and so many other people's businesses and wealth and whatnot? And do you think that is something that people can attain to get after? Do you need a degree for it? Do you need a business degree? Do you need a doctorate degree? Like, are there any qualifications of that nature? And do you recommend people to, follow that profession to potentially get into it one day?
So what I will say is what I do requires a lot of knowledge of tax law, securities law, and like general understanding of how businesses work. You don't necessarily need a degree per se because you can outsource to a lawyer, you can outsource to a CPA, you can outsource most things. What I do from a full functionality, most people would call family office services. So a general family office does all of this for a single family, very high fees. And so I try to bring that level of knowledge to regular people. I wouldn't say I work with that many like regular people, but regular
Like everyday people.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. All right. So is there anything after that? So we have foundation, and we have, trust, and we have fund, and we have, what was after that?
After that, you're just building the fund.
Discovery.
Discovery is the beginning. We got to know what we're working with. But once you are private, asset protected, giving, have a fund, you're investing, all you're doing is playing it like a Monopoly game. Trying to get as many assets as possible. You exit them, get big chunks of money, do that again, live your life. Give more.
And how long does it take for the trust to build a certain amount of wealth over a period of time? Like,
depends on how much money you
generation.
start with.
Repeat that.
I said it depends how much money you start with. So
okay,
if you're like the average,
what is the least amount of money somebody can start with? That's a good question.
$1 and some information.
You're being serious?
Yeah, I'm being serious because intellectual property may not be money, but it's monetizable. Your trust can own your intellectual property. So you might not be making no money from that book right now, that course right now, that whatever. That could be in a trust, and it literally can become monetizable in the future because you licensed it to somebody else and you started selling it. That's an actual asset.
That makes sense. So the things in a trust doesn't necessarily have to be money. It can be product, intellectual property, ideas, like things of that nature. Okay, that makes sense. All right. I mean, I learned a lot during this conversation. This is amazing. I can't wait to, put this out and give this to our viewer. Where can the people follow you at?
I'm Lala Hurdles 2 on Instagram. I'm mostly active there. I'm Idlette on Twitter. I'm pretty active there. And on LinkedIn, I'm LaVonne Idlette. Look me up. That's probably the only place I'll respond right away if you send me a DM. All the other places become spammy. And if you are sort of like, I need these things and I'm ready for discovery, go to bewiser.com, which is b3xwiser.com.
100%. Also, I'm not sure if you're on Threads, but if whatever you just said here, if you can, if you jot down some ideas on that Threads thing, I'm telling you, that's a game changer.
Really?
At least it's been 100%.
Oh, wow. I've opened it 100%. A few times. I know I have one, but
yeah, I'm gonna tell you this. So Threads is it's like anything that's new, that when a big platform pushes it out, they're pushing it out because they're competing with Twitter, and the growth on Threads is, you probably can get more growth on Threads than you can on a platform like Twitter because it's newer, because not a lot of people are on it, or the majority of the world isn't on it yet or leveraging it because they probably use Twitter. So you can probably grow a lot more on Threads. Just wanted to put it out there. And there's an app called, I think it's called like Plot Twist. I think it's the app, but it's a Threads app where you can schedule your thoughts out.
Plot Twist, okay.
All right, let me see what it is. Let me not give you the wrong thing. It's right here. Oh no, it's not called. What is it called? Black Twist. Yeah, Black Twist. So you can literally schedule your Threads out, on there. But anyways, yeah, that's because you have a lot of good information. You have a great information, actually. People need to know that for sure.
That's the name of the app. It is not coming up in the App Store.
Yeah, Black Twist.
Just text me. Just do the share and just text it.
Oh, it's not coming up on the App Store. How did I find it? I don't know. I'll just send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, easy. But my last question is this, right? When you hear the phrase "secure your future," what does that necessarily mean to you when you hear that?
It means doing what's required for the future you intend to have.
There you go. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you so much. Y'all, make sure you guys subscribe, like, share, comment, and make sure you stay tuned in so you don't get tuned out.
Hey.